Okay, good morning and welcome to the May 26, 2021 Delta Conservancy meeting. I am Supervisor Karen Mitchoff, Chair of the Conservancy this year. May we have roll call?
Karen, just before we do roll call really quickly, I'm just going to run through the Zoom platform issue for folks so that they
okay.
Yeah.
I thought
so.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So we're on the Zoom platform. We're getting pretty used to this, but just for anyone from the public who is joining, board members and liaison advisors have the ability to unmute themselves, their panel members, and then can raise their hand if they want to be recognized. Members of the public, you will need to raise your hand. So you would need to go into the platform and find the raise your hand button, and you will be recognized to provide comment at appropriate times. If you're actually calling on the phone, you would want to hit #2 to raise your hand, and then the host will unmute you at the appropriate time. And then you might need to actually unmute your phone as well. So with that, Jessica, if you could go ahead and do roll call, recognize voting members, ex officio members, and any liaison advisors who are with us.
Absolutely. Supervisor Chair Mitchoff.
Here.
Vice Chair Winternitz.
Here.
Supervisor Natoli. No. Supervisor Catherine Miller. Supervisor Mashburn.
Here.
Supervisor Provenza. Sally Lukenbill.
Here.
Brian Cash.
Here.
Good morning. Sandy Matsumoto.
Here.
Board Member Rustaller. Board Member Sandoval. Do we have any ex officio board members? Assembly Member Grayson or Senator Dodd?
Here, Jim Grayson.
Good morning.
Welcome.
And liaison advisors, I saw a few. I saw Moira McKinnisby. Pell. I saw Natasha Nelson here for Eric. Are there any others that I haven't seen?
Yeah.
Hi,
Jim
Steve
Waters.
Chappelle. Oh,
Jim Waters for Steve Chappelle.
Oh, I got you wrong there. We can change your name, Jim, from Steve Chappelle to Jim. Look at already done. Look at that.
There you go. Thank you.
Jessica, I just wanted to note that Dolly Sandoval is actually here. I think, Dolly, you were either disconnected or you were not.
Oh,
you were on
I
mute,
got Dolly.
so.
No, I was muted. Yeah. I'm here. Thanks, Jessica.
We do have one hand raised from a dial-in user on the public. I don't know if this is a member of your commission or not. So
Go ahead. It might be Larry Rustaller.
Okay.
You should be able to unmute yourself.
Yes, Don Natoli.
Hello, Don.
Good morning.
Good morning. Let me check you in. Okay, we do have a quorum. We can continue.
Thank you. We're going to change the order of the agenda a little bit since Supervisor Natoli needs to leave at 9:30. So after the consent calendar, our only other action item is item 8. So that will move up. And I do want to apologize, everyone. You'll notice I'm eating breakfast like Dolly. I've been on Zooms way early this morning. And so normally I wouldn't eat at a meeting, but I'm sorry. If I don't eat now, I don't get to eat till 2 o'clock. So with that, I'm not going to do introductions. The roll call takes care of that. Public comment. This is the opportunity for anyone to speak on any item not on today's agenda. There will be an opportunity to speak on agendized items. Do we have anybody, Jessica, who has raised their hand who wishes to speak?
Elisa, do we see anyone on the contact email?
Okay, Elisa's handling that. All right, thank you,
Contact
Elisa. We're going to move on to the consent calendar, which is the approval of our March 24th, 2021 board meeting. Does anyone have any questions, comments, edits they wish to make? Seeing none, are there any members of the public who've raised their hand, Elisa? Nope. All right, we'll move on. May I have a motion, please?
Mashburn, I'll move approval.
Thank you, Mitch. Second? Don't be shy, folks. I'll appoint somebody. Dolly's going to second it. All right. With that, may we have a roll call vote?
Supervisor Mitchoff,
Yes.
Chair Mitchoff, Vice Chair Winternitz,
Yes.
Supervisor Natoli,
Aye.
Supervisor Miller, absent.
Yes.
No,
I'm
you're here.
Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
We'll get you in as a yes.
Yeah.
Supervisor Mashburn,
Yes.
Supervisor Provenza, absent. Board Member Lukenbill.
I'll abstain. I was not at that meeting.
Mhm. Board Member Cash. Board Member Matsumoto.
Also abstaining, I missed it.
Board Member Roostaller. And Board Member Sandoval.
So I don't mind seconding the motion, but I too will abstain because I missed that meeting.
Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We do have 6 yays. The motion carries.
Thank you very much. We're now going to move to item 8, which is the consideration of the Prop 1 Ecosystem Restoration and Water Quality Grant Program, final Cycle 5 grant guidelines. And Mr. Heyman is going to give us his report.
Yeah, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
This agenda item presents the grant guidelines for the Cycle 5 solicitation of the Conservancy's Proposition 1 grant program for board consideration. Just to give us all a little background, make sure we're on the same page. Each solicitation cycle for the Proposition 1 grant program has had a sort of refurbished, refined version of the grant guidelines prepared for it. And as we prepare for Cycle 5, the Cycle 5 grant guidelines have been prepared the same way. In January of this year, at the January board meeting, the board approved the draft Cycle 5 grant guidelines. And after that approval, the Conservancy staff posted that draft to our website, announced the posting via social media, and also via the Conservancy's contact lists. The draft remained up and we remained open to comments for a 30-day public comment period. Over the course of those 30 days, no comments were received. After that 30-day comment period, Conservancy staff finalized the grant guidelines by making some minor formatting and grammar changes, and also adding one small note about where to find information on previously funded projects on our website. That final grant guideline is now presented to you as attachment 8.2 in the board packet for your consideration. If the board votes to approve the grant guidelines, we the staff will open the Cycle 5 solicitation no later than August 2nd and possibly as early as July 1st to give potential applicants just that extra month to consider the grant guidelines and prepare their application materials. So with that, any questions?
Okay, yes, board members, any clarifying questions of Mr. Heyman? Seeing none, I'm going to ask if there's any public comment on this, Elisa. All right, I'll bring it back to the board for a motion.
I'll move approval.
Thank you, Mitch, and Don is seconding it. Roll call, please. You're on mute, Jessica.
I am no longer. Chair Mitchoff,
Yes.
Vice Chair Winternitz,
Aye.
Supervisor Natoli,
Aye.
Supervisor Miller,
Aye.
Supervisor Mashburn,
Aye.
Supervisor Provenza, absent. Board Member Lukenbill,
Aye.
Board Member Cash. Did you say aye? I'm sorry. Yes.
You did.
Yes, aye.
Okay, Board Member Matsumoto,
Yes.
Board Member Roostaller is absent, and Board Member Sandoval.
Yes.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The motion carries.
Thank you. And I want to thank staff, Mr. Heyman, and everyone who worked hard on this. I know it's a long slog sometimes, but we appreciate that and we'll look forward to getting new grant applications. So that's wonderful.
Thank you very much.
And Dawn, I announced before you were able to join that you may have to leave. So those were the 2 action items. So we'll look forward to your continued participation, but we also understand if you have to take off.
Okay, good. Thanks, Karen. Appreciate it.
Yeah. We'll go back to item 5 now, which is the executive officer's report. Campbell?
Great. Good morning, everyone. It's always nice to get the hard work out of the way first. So I'm going to run through the update, just hitting the highlights in the executive officer's report. You've got that in your packet. A couple notes on the COVID-19 update. I mean, like the rest of the world, we are exploring what it looks like to go back to the office right now. We did have a meeting yesterday with all of the state conservancies. That's something we like to do once or twice a year. And it was fascinating, just the number of questions and permeations of questions that have come up around this issue. Natural Resource Agency has provided their guidelines, and we are still waiting for Cal HR's guidelines on return to work policy. Our understanding is that that continues to be negotiated with the unions. And we also understand that if we essentially adopt that guideline when it's out, that will preclude a need for us to interact with the unions potentially. So we're essentially kind of in a holding pattern, waiting for that final guidelines grant awareness, or I'm sorry, return to work policy. As we've discussed, we intend to be as flexible as possible and take advantage of the efficiencies that we've achieved, but also try to make sure that we get that face-to-face time, which is important. With regard to future board meetings, the state is looking at Bagley-Keene requirements. There was the emergency order that allowed us to do virtual meetings like this. Bagley-Keene typically, or in the past, had required that any board member who wanted to participate virtually would be required to, we would have to post on the agenda the location where that board meeting would be, and that location would have to be accessible by the public. So they're looking at that, seeing if what the future of that actually looks like. I think worst case scenario, even if that requirement is maintained in the future, we will still have this capability for all future board meetings. It just makes sense for the increased public participation, as well as for participation from our board members who from a distance. So we will keep track of that and obviously try to provide as much notice as to how that's trending as we can. Our expectation is that the July board meeting will be virtual, but then the October meeting may be some sort of hybrid. Okay, so moving on, justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. We're at the request of board member Matsumoto. In the January meeting, we're getting a full overview of that under agenda item 9, so I'll hold off there. The Delta Conservancy Strategic Plan update. You may recall that we had indicated that at this board meeting, we would provide a bit of an overview of the significant changes that we anticipate in the development of the next strategic plan for the next 5 years. Through our review and our work internally, what we've determined is we don't anticipate significant changes. Like the last update, we intend to sort of tighten things up, move things more towards a, just a little more streamlined. So there's really not a lot to talk about today. So our expectation is that at the July meeting, we will bring to you an initial draft for your consideration. And then at the October meeting, we would bring a public draft. And then at the January meeting, we would address all comments and we would bring to the board for their consideration a final draft of the updated strategic plan. Moving on to, please stop me if anyone has any questions, feel free. Moving on to ecosystem restoration, you have the nutria update. There's nothing really significant there. We continue to catch nutria. That's a good thing, but they're not getting out of control. That's an even better thing. The Community and Economic Enhancement Program, I wanted to point out that we are working with the Delta Protection Commission to do Delta Tourism and Awareness, to do Delta marketing workshops. There's 5 of them scheduled. 1 has been held already. 1 is this week, and then there's 1 in June and July. So these have been really great. It's a great opportunity. I want to thank Elisa Harrop on our staff for helping to coordinate this. Natasha Dunn with the Delta Protection Commission is also on staff on the call. And it's been a great opportunity to interact with the community and help them promote themselves. Moving on to Delta Science, there's quite a bit of information here on the various programs that don't have their own individual program updates like Prop 1 and Prop 68. I'll leave that for most of you to read. There's some great information there. What I did want to highlight, though, is that the 11th Biannual Bay Delta Science Conference was April 6th through 9th. As usual, it was a great event, a culmination of all the science that's been happening in this system. And very proud to say that we were prominently featured with 3 posters and 1 actual speaking session. So it was a really great event. Last thing I wanted to cover is the board directives from the March board meeting. And the first was that the board requested a process to receive final reports for completed projects. So you'll recall that we have now on the Prop 1 update, and we will do the same for Prop 68, when there is a final report available, that will be noted in the update. And then the process is that we would like board members to just request that final report if they are interested in it, and we will make sure that we can provide it to you. The second directive was that board members requested the status of projects active and active proposals be identified on the Proposition 68, and staff has incorporated information that helps to discern that information, and that's available in attachment 7 on agenda item 7. So that concludes the program. I'll pause briefly for any questions, and then we'll move on to the Jessica providing the budget update. Any questions on the program?
I have a question, but I wanted to look to my board members first if they had any questions. Seeing none. Campbell, under the board directives to staff, item 1, where it says that, I'm not sure I'm clear here. I think those completed projects, will they be posted on the website? It bothers me that people have to request the report. It would seem to me that there should be a way to post on the website for each of those grants, the report, the completed report. So if the public is looking, they can see how their
Yes.
dollars.
Yeah, absolutely. That's ideal, and that's what we're working toward. The challenge is the accessibility requirement at this point. So we're going to be
What
working.
does that mean? The accessibility.
Everything that's posted on our website has to be ADA accessible. So it has to be able to be converted so that a reader can actually read it and provide all the information. And that can be a challenging effort to convert maps and tables so that they're actually readable. So we're working through that, as is the state on all of these issues. But for the time being, the approach is if a board member's interested, we can very quickly electronically forward it, but we're not ready to post them yet.
Okay. Can you make some sort of comment on the website that the public can request it to, not just board members?
Absolutely, we should make that. Yes. Yes.
And maybe some, due to accessibility concerns in converting maps and drawings, IT staff is working on this, but in the meantime, if anyone would like a copy of the report, please email and/or contact us at. I just think that's a good transparency way of handling that right now.
Concur. Yes.
Okay.
We'll work on that. Thank you.
Is it possible, Campbell, building upon Karen's suggestion here, that we just post the text of each report and then alert readers to requesting the visuals, the maps, the pictures, etc.? I don't know how hard it is to cut out the pictures out of a report.
Right. Well, I'm certainly not an expert in this field, but my sense is that what exists, you have to make accessible, right?
Okay.
So if you're
Okay.
actually,
so if you're going to do part of it, you have to do all of
Right.
it.
So one of the things that we're working on is trying to require that that our grantees actually go through that process of making their reports accessible. But that's not in our current grant agreements. But that's something we're trending towards, and then also just trying to give them guidance on how to make it more accessible, and then figuring out how we can get them posted.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, go ahead, Campbell.
All right, Jessica, let's move on to the budget and expenditure update, please.
Hi, agenda item 5, attachment 3 is our budget and expenditure report. It is through the third quarter. So it's from July of 2020 through March 31st of 2021. So we are 75% through the year. Our number 4 total personnel services is over 70% of our budget. I mean, that's where most of our resources go. And that is in line with the budget and expenditures for the year. Deborah is going to speak about what we are working on currently. Our grand total is a little bit lower percentage. We are still plagued with not being invoiced from a lot of interagency groups. They're quarterly and annually. I do anticipate that we will fully utilize our funds that we have budgeted for the year. That's where we are.
Does anyone have questions or comments for Jessica?
And Deborah, I think, was going to speak next.
Okay, I
just a little bit of extra information. And as Jessica said, our report goes through March 31st, but those are the expenses that have actually hit through March 31st. But as she noted, there are things that we've incurred that we haven't yet been billed for. So some things, if they're seeming like they're lagging behind, that is the reason. And as we always do every year, we keep a prudent reserve through the course of the year. And then as we get toward the end of the year, we start looking at right-sizing our budget for actual expenses incurred, and then finding where we can put some of our funds toward initiatives to either further our mission, support our staff, things like that. And this year, just so that every year at this time, we try to let the board know where some of that funding is going. And this year, I'm happy to say that we've been able to pay off the amortization on our tenant improvements. We expanded our office a few years ago, and we were actually able to pay that off, which saves us some interest, which is lovely. Provided some training to staff. We try very hard to support our staff and make sure that they have development opportunities. We are reviewing and updating all of our HR policies. So we're working with Natural Resources Agency to get some assistance from them, and then also Cal HR Health Council, which can be quite expensive. So it's a good chunk of money that we're putting towards that to make sure that we have really solid policies for the Conservancy. And then, as you know, with the telework situation, in the emergency situation, and then of course going forward, we will have a strong telework component. Having strong IT is very important. So we've set aside some money to do hardware replacements, just as a proactive, making sure that we have good hardware to support our staff for that. And then some leave buyback. So no huge contracts this year, nothing like that, but things that are going to support our operations and keep us solid going forward.
All right. With that, any questions or comments of either Jessica or Deborah on our budget? And Lisa, do we have any public comment?
No public comment.
Thank you. All right. That was an informational item, and we're going to move on to item 6. Pardon me. Yes, the nutria eradication program, it's there attached. So item 6 is the Proposition 1 Ecosystem Restoration and Water Quality Grant Program update. Mr. Heyman, you're on again.
Hello again. No major developments on this particular one to bring the board's attention to. However, I did want to bring one significant change, and that is on page 1, right under the cycle 4 fiscal year heading. It says that 9 grant agreements have been executed and 1 is still in negotiation, and that is an error. Just a week ago, the final one was executed, and so they're all now finished.
At the time you prepared the report, that was accurate.
It was.
You are
it was
updating
indeed.
and amending. I don't want it to appear that there was an error. There's not an error.
Just an advantageous development.
Thank you. Does anyone have, I know Jim's not on the line. He usually is our eagle eye on this. Anyone have any questions or comments on Aaron's report? Do we have any members of the public who wish to comment?
You know, I would just very quickly say that this means that we have 29 executed grant agreements for ecosystem restoration projects out there on the landscape, affecting well over 5,000 or 6,000 acres, all with unanimous support from our local board members, and just demonstrating that we can do restoration in a way that's compatible. And that's what the Conservancy is good at. And so we need to always remind our partners that we can help them achieve their objectives through close work with the community. So just thought I'd put in that plug.
No, good idea. Always helpful.
I have a comment here.
I'm sorry.
This is Leo.
Hi, Leo. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, so I would very much like to view some of these completed projects post-COVID, post-COVID. I'm looking at one in particular, the Bay Point Habitat Restoration Project. It says project work complete, all funds have been dispersed. This is East Bay Regional Park, 44 acres of wetland and grassland. At some point in time when we're able to go out together, it'd be nice to see what some of these accomplishments look like.
And I would love to welcome you all to Contra Costa County and seeing that. So staff, if you'll put, I think based on Campbell's report, I know here in local government, most everybody's looking to a September timeline of being back in public. So I don't know if it's best to go out there in the winter time, but maybe in the spring, it would be lovely to see out there. But I'll leave that up to staff when you want to organize that. And Assembly Member Grayson and I will be more than happy to welcome you to that beautiful restoration project.
Well, we're anxious to get you all out in the field too. Whether or not we can do it in October, we don't know, but we will be planning for that as soon as possible.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or comments? And I think Elisa said there were no public comments, so we will move on to item 7, which is the Proposition 68 Community and Economic Enhancement Grant Program, and Robin Kroc. Morning, Ms. Kroc.
Good morning, Chair Mitchoff and our other board members. So you have the staff report, and in front of you, I'm not going to take a lot of time to go through the whole thing since you obviously have had a chance to look at it. Just highlights, we did, as you may recall, you did approve funding, an award for that first project, Pittsburgh. So that table is now new on our staff report since we have a funded project, and that will hopefully be expanding. And we're working on developing the grant agreement for that. I'm just going to scroll down really quick. Of course, the next table are the working proposals. As you may recall, this program does allow us to work with the applicants. So working proposals mean that they're in development by the applicants, but staff is working with them on those. We did get, I'm not sure if Supervisor Natoli is still on the line or not. We did get.
He is.
Yeah, I feel okay.
So we did get the revised concept proposal from Sacramento County for the Victory Highway sign, which they're calling it differently. It's the Freeport signage. And we are in the process of reviewing that, and we'll be getting back to them about that that proposal, that planning grant for that signage. Those are the main changes. You might notice some differences. We made some slight changes just in the formatting due to web accessibility. So if anybody has any questions, please let me know. And I'm just going to leave it at that. There aren't a lot of changes from the last time, and I will just answer any questions that anybody has.
Anyone have any questions or comments for Robin?
Madam Chair, this is Karen. This is Don.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, just Robin, I don't know if you heard that with the Discover the Delta Foundation at the county level, we had worked to look at previous permits and the structure for that, and got some favorable determinations relative to the vesting of the use permit for the educational center there. So I don't know if that's been communicated with you, but I know that was one of the boxes that needed to be checked. We, our planning and building departments worked with some of the project proponents, and I think we're in a much better place as it relates to recognizing previous site work that was done there and allowing, obviously, new building permit to continue goes forward, but recognizing the invested use for the educational center. So I don't know if that was communicated. I want to be sure that was on the record. So.
Thank you. Yes, we had not heard from them about that. So I appreciate the update, and that does make a difference with that project.
Okay, and if you need any specifics, certainly follow up with me, Robin. Our building and planning department have done a pretty thorough review and have put it in writing. So if there's anything you need in that regard, just reach out to me. Be good. Thanks.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Mia. Thanks, Karen.
Sure. Thank you, Don. Anyone else? Comments or questions? And Elisa, do we have any hands up from the public?
No public comment.
All right, great. Thank you, Robin, for your report. We did item 8, so we're going to move on now to item 9, which is the Justice, Equity, Diversion, and Inclusion Committee update, and Dylan Moore will give us this presentation. Good
So I'm
morning.
going to tee this up just a little bit here. So we've been sharing with you all, mostly in the Executive Officer's report, that we do have a Justice, a JEDI, I'm just going to shorten it. Justice,
I love that,
Equity, Diversity,
JEDI.
Inclusion, subcommittee, and it's chaired by Dylan Moore and Shelley Temple King on our staff, who've been really doing a great job in helping us, focus on these issues, both internally and externally. It's been great, I think, well, it's just been a really great experience. And at the January board meetings, Member Matsumoto requested that we do a bit of an overview of all the work that we're doing. So very happy that Dylan's going to be able to walk you through a slide deck and bring you all up to speed on our activities. So take it away, Dylan.
Thank you, Campbell, for that introduction. All right, as Campbell mentioned, myself along with Shelley Temple King chair the Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, aka JEDI Committee. So today we'll just go over what the committee has covered so far, what our next steps are, and what we have to look forward to in the future. James, if you could, great. All right, so before we dive into all of that, we thought it would be important to clarify what JEDI stands for and what JEDI means within the context of the Conservancy's work. So as I mentioned earlier, JEDI refers to Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. This work at the Conservancy is both internal and external. At the moment, the bulk of our work has focused internally as we've built up a foundation within our agency. And we look forward to moving the work more externally in the near future. Our JEDI work is both specific projects, but also a holistic approach to our work. So we have some specific items that we're doing, including our staff collaborative learning sessions, which I'll discuss in more detail later on. But we are also looking more broadly at the way that this work can help shape and improve the Conservancy's overall impact within the Delta. And we want to be considerate of how we can address issues of diversity in a way that advances our mission. So be both strategic and efficient in figuring out and determining how JEDI can advance our role within the Delta, which is, of course, we're all very familiar to advance our ecosystem restoration, as well as the Delta community and economy. This work got kickstarted back in June of 2020. As I'm sure you're all familiar, there were a number of national conversations around JEDI issues happening at that time. And this provided some renewed energy sort of across the state and throughout a number of state agencies to focus on JEDI and consider the ways that JEDI work can advance the mission and our service to the public. And the Conservancy believes that by enhancing these efforts that we can improve the economy and the environment for all members of the public within the Delta. And so this is truly a benefit for everyone. And we want to be able to ensure that we are distributing our resources to the greatest effect for all members of the Delta community. All right. So we are in the midst of drafting a series of JEDI goals, which includes some near-term projects as well as some longer-term and more external-facing work. The first issue that we are currently working on and have quite a lot of vigor behind is increasing staff awareness and understanding of issues relating to JEDI. So as I mentioned earlier, we do have some staff collaborative learning sessions that we have twice a month, both within our all staff meetings that we all attend, as well as an optional Jedi brown bag lunch. And within these meetings, we discuss a variety of issues relating to justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. So far, we've covered gender equity, racial equity, disability access, and we look forward to covering a number of other topics as we continue these sessions. We also hope to foster a workplace culture that is inclusive and supportive of all Conservancy staff and stakeholders, to coordinate with other state and Delta entities to improve engagement with Delta communities, and to develop justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion principles to steward our work both internally and within the Delta community. Oh, thanks, James. The status of these efforts so far. So as I mentioned, the Jedi Committee is currently co-leading and facilitating monthly collaborative learning sessions. Those are the brown bag and the all staff meetings that I mentioned earlier. And these really started as a follow-up to the implicit bias training that we received back in September of 2020. So we all started with a foundation of learning that was provided to all of us, which was a really wonderful start to our learning together. The Conservancy executive leadership has met with the leadership of the Delta Stewardship Council and Delta Protection Commission to coordinate our Jedi efforts and determine, how we can coordinate our efforts and be in alignment with our service across the Delta in partnership with these other agencies. Conservancy staff continue to communicate with other state agencies, including the State Coastal Conservancy and the Natural Resources Agency, as well as a variety of other agencies throughout the state of California that have similar missions in serving both the environment and the public. And we've shared information about our existing Jedi efforts. We have learned from the existing and previous efforts of these agencies and continue to share best practices and lessons learned throughout the Jedi work that's being completed. Jedi co-leads have drafted a procedure for developing our formal Jedi principles, and we are working with executive staff to begin implementing that process, at which point we will be able to provide a more formal deliverable to both the board and the public regarding our Jedi efforts, our goals, and the principles that we will use to broadly guide the Conservancy's Jedi work. James. Because the bulk of our work at this moment is focused on our internal staff education, I wanted to provide a little bit of insight into the kinds of things that we've discussed and the goals of that education. The best way to do that was through identifying the learning outcomes that we focused on in these sessions. So right off the bat, we wanted to make sure that we were all approaching these conversations with a shared understanding of what the terminology means. So we focused on defining concepts of justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. We want to understand how inequality and inequity are present in the workplace and within our communities, which is really focusing on sort of the systemic and the more broader, the broader topics that we cover. But we also want to recognize the way those broader and more systemic issues impact our own personal lives and recognize the impacts of inequality in ourselves and within those around us. We also want to consider our roles as individuals and as an organization in making the principles of Jedi a reality, both for our office and for the Delta and the public at large. James. So looking forward, we will continue our work with the Delta Stewardship Council, the Delta Protection Commission, and other state agencies through both Campbell's coordination with the executive leadership of those agencies, as well as coordination and conversations happening at the staff level to, again, share best practices and determine how we can be in alignment in our Jedi efforts. We hope to finalize the Jedi principles, which I mentioned earlier, and be able to have a public-facing deliverable, which we can use to communicate with people about what are our broader goals and the principles that will guide our work with the Conservancy and our Jedi work. We also want to welcome members of the Delta community to be a part of our Jedi efforts. One of the most important lessons learned that we've heard a number of times in conversations with other state agencies is respecting the fact that many of the agencies and organizations doing Jedi work within the community are being tasked with a number of different things. And so to avoid our stakeholder burnout and to respect that many folks are working with limited time and resources. We want to welcome the community in ways that respect those resources and the availability, while still making sure that all members of the public are heard and represented in our JEDI work. And James, if you could. Great. So with that, I will wrap up the formal part of this presentation and happily open things up to questions from the board or from the public. If folks find that they have additional questions after the meeting or would like any other follow-up information, they are welcome to contact myself or Shelley Temple King for additional information or answers.
Thank you, Dylan, for the report. Can you stop sharing? There we go. Sandy, I know you requested this work. Did you have any comments? I'd like you to go first if you do.
Thank you, Chair Mitchoff. Yeah, Dylan, thank you so much for the great presentation, and to you and Shelley for your leadership on this effort. I know it's kind of a deep journey for both individuals and the organization, so I appreciate the energy that you're putting into it, that all of the staff are putting into it. And also thanks to Campbell for your leadership and making space and time for folks to do this. I think you guys are building a great foundation. It sounds like a great kind of plan of action, very practical, but also thoughtful. And I definitely would be curious to hear more in the future about sort of the integration with community in the Delta. I know I have a lot to learn there, and I think it'll really help. Just think of, how we tie the work and make sure that we're advancing all the things that we're hoping we're advancing without kind of, I'm particularly interested, I guess, in blind spots and places, where we may have really good intention, but we may be off the mark a little bit. So reflecting on those types of things, I'd be interested to hear that as you guys, as you connect with folks and start to learn. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I have a question to staff. Are we coordinate? I don't know if coordinate is the right word, but are we checking in with not only other conservancies, but perhaps this is good work, but I don't want to reinvent the wheel. Are we looking at state partners so that it's excellent work? I just want to, you've probably already thought of that. So could you comment on that?
Yeah, we absolutely are. And I think, the Coastal Conservancy was a leader in putting out a series of JEDI, or I think they did, diversity, equity, inclusion guidelines for their work. And that is something that we've looked at. It's very comprehensive. It took a great deal of public outreach. So we're looking at how we achieve something similar. And that's also the point of our coordination with the Stewardship Council and the DPC to ensure that the three agencies are aligned and that we're not coming out with wildly divergent principles or just approaches to this issue. So I think the answer to your question is yes. The more coordination, the more we can learn from previous efforts, the better.
Great, thank you. Do we have any public comment, Elisa?
No public comment.
All right, thank you again for that report. Moving on, we're at item 10, which is the Delta Stewardship Council update. Is Amanda on the line? There she is. Good morning, Amanda.
Good morning.
I go back and forth with first names and last names. I try to be respectful, but we all know each other. So I don't want anybody to feel disrespected if I call you by your first name.
No worries. No, well, good morning, everybody. I'm glad to be here. And I was glad to hear, I think that the last half of Dylan's presentation on the Conservancy's efforts around JEDI issues, and the Stewardship Council is working a lot internally, kind of on our own work, and are very interested in continuing or increasing the partnership with the Conservancy and with the Protection Commission as well. So I think there'll be more to come over the coming months as we all kind of figure out what we're doing and how we're going to go about doing it in the best way for us to work together on these issues, both internally amongst the three agencies, but then also for the Delta as a whole as well externally. So I just have a few quick updates for you this morning. First, so the council's May meeting was last week. Normally, I think it ends up usually being the same week as the Conservancy meetings, but we had it last week because it also included a hearing for the certification of consistency for DWR's Lookout Slough project. 4 entities appealed the certification, and the council heard from DWR and the appellants during the hearing last week. The council now has 60 days to either deny the appeals or remand the project back to DWR. And so the council will be discussing and making a decision at its July council meeting. And I really can't say anything else about that. We are in ex parte communication, but I did just want to let you all know that that process is currently underway. And if you have more questions about the appeal process, the certification of consistency process, and about this particular project and appeal, additional information is available on the council's website. Next, so the Delta lead scientist, Dr. Laurel Larson, started a kind of a new, kind of interesting and fun event, I think last month, and it's called Ask Me Anything, and it's an Instagram live series. And Dr. Larson and a special guest chat the third Thursday of every month at noon, discussing a topic of importance to the Delta science enterprise. And so during last week's session, Dr. Larson was joined by Delta Watermaster Michael George, and they had a good conversation and answered a number of questions about drought and water management actions during the drought. So it was very timely. You know, there's a lot of conversation, a lot, you know, out and about the drought at the moment. So it was very well attended as well. So anyway, I encourage you the third Thursday of the month, if you're free during lunchtime, to join in. The next Ask Me Anything is scheduled for Thursday, June 17th. And I'm not sure what the topic is yet or who the special guest will be, but we'll be announcing that on our listserv as we get closer to that date. And then finally, this Friday, the Delta Independent Science Board is hosting a seminar to help stimulate discussion on forecasting needs in the Delta. So we're going to have, or the ISB is going to be hosting Dr. Michael Dietz, who's from Boston University, and he'll be presenting a seminar on the opportunities and challenges with ecological forecasting. And this seminar is part of the development of the Science Needs Assessment for the Delta, which has been an interagency effort led by the Delta Plant Interagency Implementation Committee and the Delta ISB. Which has identified the need to develop a more robust forecasting system for the Delta to help in decision making. And so this should be a good seminar to just kind of learn a bit more about ecological forecasting, and encourage you, if you've got some time Friday morning, to tune in. And there are links on the council's website about how to do that. So, and I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone has any.
Thank you, Amanda. Anyone with any questions for Amanda?
Karen, I have a question.
Sure, go ahead, Leo.
Hi, Amanda.
Hi.
So could you bring us up to date on the status of the Delta Science Program and its members regarding compensation? Has that issue been resolved? I heard a rumor the Delta Science Program is going away. That would make me very sad if that happened.
No. The Delta Science Program is not going away, and neither is the Delta Independent Science Board. And so those are two distinct programs that were created independently within the Delta Reform Act. The Delta Independent Science Board, I think, is what you're referring to, and that's really kind of what there's been a lot of talk and discussion around, both at the council meetings and at the Delta ISB meetings as well. I am not the best person to talk to you about this, but I will do what I can. So there, with I think AB5 and some other legislation that went in a couple of years ago, it made it challenging to compensate certain people in certain ways, and so we kind of found ourselves in a bit of a catch-22 with the Delta ISB. Just to put it very simply. And so we are now doing what we can within state law to make sure we are compensating the Delta Independent Science Board. There has been some legislation that's been introduced, and I cannot remember the author. I think it's SB 821. I think it is passed whichever its House of Origin was, and it's now in the other house. And I know they are working, the bill's author is working to try and address some of the issues related to the Delta ISB and compensation through that legislation. So we are following it very closely. We are working with the Delta Independent Science Board to support them during this time. We do dedicate at the council a couple of staff people almost wholly to the Delta Independent Science Board, and we're also trying to get creative in other ways to support them. So we are very, very supportive of the Independent Science Board and are doing what we can to try and ensure that they still get the compensation they need to do the very important service that they provide to the Delta writ large. So does that help, or does that just muddy the waters?
Oh, that's helpful. It's helpful to know that it's being worked on. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments of Amanda? Any public comment, Elisa?
No public comment.
All right, thank you. Moving on, I heard Campbell say that Eric isn't joining us, but Natasha Nelson is here for the Delta Protection Commission. Good morning, Natasha. You're on mute somehow. Doesn't show that you're on mute, but we can't hear you.
Oh.
There you go. Now we can.
Maybe it just took my internet a second. Sorry about that. Thank you, Chair. We have documents related to our economic sustainability plan, which was published in 2012, as well as the updates on our website now. As noted earlier by Campbell Ingram, we do have to do remediation, and those kind of documents do cost in the thousands of dollars. So you have to keep in mind, it's very expensive to bring documents on website. And those are on the original delta.ca.gov website. We were the first form, so we get the best website. We continue to host advisory committee and task group meetings for our national heritage area. If people are interested in joining those task group meetings, they are being held right now, and we are starting to form our operational task force, and we'd like more applicants. So please, if you're interested in operationalizing our national heritage area, please reach out to my staff, Blake Roberts. We have an online and paper survey circulating right now for what people's preferences are for the Great California Delta Trail. And we hope to gain feedback by June 4th, although we'll probably extend that since our paper surveys are going out today. And the front page of our website has a direct link if you'd like to take that survey and give us your input on how you might use a trail and what you'd like to see in a trail features. Executive Director and Chair Natoli participated in the Lookout Flu proceeding, which is our official role, is to give comments. We also sent a comment letter, and that was endorsed by our commissioners last week at the May 20th meeting. If you look at our May 20th packet for the commission meeting, you can see that letter. Attachments are available by request only. Again, our attachments contain many maps, but most of it is covering how we calculated the levy costs that are presented in the letter. And happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments for Natasha? I know it was a little difficult to hear. Not your problem, Natasha. It was just with the internet. But seeing none, and any hands raised from the audience, Elisa?
No public comment.
All right. Thank you very much. Moving on then to item 12, which is the Delta Conveyance Program update. Is Carrie Buckman with us? There she is.
Good morning,
Carrie.
So I am here. However, we were planning to be on after 10, and most of the presentation is from Genevieve Taylor, who I think has not yet joined.
Oh, okay.
Why don't we do 13 first and come back?
Okay, thank you.
That's fine. The Eco Restore update by Charlotte Biggs. There's Charlotte. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair Metroff and board members. Yeah, I can go next. So I just had a quick update. I don't have a lot of new information regarding Eco Restore since your last board meeting in March. But for the last meeting, I highlighted 4 efforts that we hoped would start some work or have some progress going on this year in 2021. So I thought I would just quickly review those 4 efforts again today. Nothing new is on the list or been taken off the list, but I'll just kind of run through those projects that we hope will make some progress later this year. So the first effort I wanted to highlight is the Dutch Slough Tidal Restoration Project, which we actually plan to complete later this year. Many of you have been involved in this effort and tracking this effort over the years. So it's reaching a big milestone and will actually be a completed tidal wetland area. So this is 1,200 acres in Contra Costa County between Big Break and Jersey Island. The site is owned by DWR, and we started construction in 2018. And so we've moved about 3 million cubic yards of soil to elevate the marsh plain, create channels, and we revegetated the site. So the last step of construction is breaching the levee, and we plan to do that early this fall. If COVID will allow, we'll also probably have a small like breaching ceremony out there, and put some information up on our website. So I'll make sure you guys are aware of that when we get to that point. So post-construction, the site will provide habitat for fish, birds, and other wildlife. It's also envisioned as a living laboratory. We're going to do a lot of monitoring. We have partnerships with UC Davis, USGS to do that. So we're really excited about that. And hopefully we'll learn more about what the ideal elevations are for tidal wetlands, because we actually did different elevations out there to see what the how the production would be different on those different elevations. We're also working with the city of Oakley to include a public park and a trail around the site. So that's Dutch Slough, hopefully will be completed later this year. The second effort I wanted to highlight is Arnold Slough and Broadmoor Island, which we hope will start construction later this summer. They're actually two adjacent projects, but they've been permitted and planned together. There are about 700 acres in total, and so they're going to be tidal wetland restoration. It's in the Sassoon Marsh, and the two sites are owned by DWR. So we have worked through all of our permits and approvals, so the project's ready to go from that point of view, but it does take some time to do the construction bids and award the contracts and all that. So we're going through that process right now, hoping to start work out there in August around that time frame. And again, we are actually hoping to do a little groundbreaking ceremony out there, at least for the partners, the Sassoon Marsh Resource Conservation District, folks like that, as COVID will allow, I guess, or as the protocols will allow. So I'll keep you updated on that one as well. Next project I wanted to highlight was the Yolo Bypass Salmonid Habitat Restoration and Fish Passage Project, or the Fremont Weir Big Notch. So this effort is to create new infrastructure at the Fremont Weir to allow juvenile and adult fish to move between the Sacramento River floodplains and the Yolo bypass. So it's something that's been in the works for many years, in planning, a lot of outreach and planning that's gone into this effort, but we're excited because the project team has obtained the final permits. I believe there might be one more that they're working through, one more approval, but other than that, all the permits and approvals are in hand. They're working for some real estate agreements and hoping to start vegetation clearing this fall, so this year. And then the major construction work will start next spring. This will be another one that will go through the bid process and awarding a contractor, so it'll take some time to do that. But exciting to see that progress happen, especially for juvenile fish in the bypass. Lastly, I wanted to highlight Lookout Slough Tidal Habitat Restoration and Flood Improvement Project. So this is a multi-benefit habitat and flood improvement project that we're hoping will break ground sometime this year, but it's a bit uncertain. You mentioned, it's been mentioned a few times already today. Lookout Slough is over 3,000 acres of tidal habitat restoration, and then it also includes a setback levee of the state plan of flood control levee, the Yolo bypass levee. So it's in the southern Yolo bypass in Solano County. It was mentioned we received some appeals on the Delta plan consistency, and so there has been a hearing for that last week. So we aren't quite sure what the timeline is. So I'll update you more on that next time when we have more information. So those are sort of the 4 projects that one's being completed, 2 are starting work, and one's hopefully going to start work, a bit uncertain, but I wanted to keep you up to date on that. And that's really all I had, Chair Mitchoff, today. So let me know if you guys have any questions or anything else that you'd like me to highlight for your next meeting.
Well, thank you. And when you say that's all, that's quite a lot. So
yes.
Anyone with any questions or comments for Charlotte? And Elisa, my eternal question to you.
No public comment.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
I know that it's 10 o'clock, but I'm going to go to the the potential agenda items for July 28th. Campbell or staff, anything other than our usual?
Yeah, just so, I mean, there's just 2 items listed there. I mean, we're hoping to have some Prop 68 projects moving forward, probably likely by October as well. But and then we will have the presentation of the initial draft of the updated strategic plan. And one thing that's not listed there is that every July we do elections for chair and vice chair. And so we will thank both Chair Mitchoff and Vice Chair Leo Winternitz for their 2 years of service. And at that time, we typically do rotate by custom, not by any sort of, regulation. But so I'll be reaching out to several of you to talk about successors, and we will have that election in July.
Wonderful, thank you. And one more thing before we go to back to item 12. Campbell, Don Natoli, and I were in a conversation on Monday afternoon relative to a budget cut. And so Campbell, would you give an update on that, please?
Yeah, it's got to be a little bit careful here, but there was the May revise came out and there was no funding for the Delta Conservancy for our work in carbon and subsidence reversal efforts. So that's a little hard to swallow given how much work has gone into the effort, how significant and important the effort is, how much local support it has, and the historic investment in climate in the governor's budget. So we're still hopeful that through the legislative process and through the final negotiations that some of that funding will come to pass. But as of the May revise, there was no funding in the budget for the Conservancy.
Campbell, I'm sorry if I put you on the spot, recognizing you're a state employee and it's a state budget. So I'll speak on it because I know Supervisor Natoli has had to leave the meeting. He and I made a quote unquote executive decision to send a letter from the Delta County Coalition. I see Kathy's on the line and Mitch is on the line. Asking the governor and the legislature to restore this funding. We feel it's very important, and especially with this administration's efforts to address climate change. This should not be something that we have to fight for in the budget with other agencies. I guess the finance department determined, and whoever's on here from finance, this is not a criticism of you. Hi, Sally. That's the finance department's job. But those of us at the local level feel that we don't want to have to go to other agencies and ask for money that we feel should be specifically set aside for this. So I just wanted to bring you all up to date on those efforts. So back to item 12, which is the Delta Conveyance Program update. Carrie, is everybody ready to go?
We are. Thank you, Chair Mitchoff and members of the council. Thanks for shifting things around a little to accommodate our schedules. We really appreciate it. So I'm going to start with a brief update on the overall project and then hand it over to Genevieve Taylor. So just a couple of quick updates. We are proceeding with work on our environmental impact report under the California Environmental Quality Act, and the Army Corps of Engineers is proceeding to develop an environmental impact statement under the National Environmental Policy Act. Both of those draft documents are scheduled to be available in early to mid 2022. In the meantime, one of the big things that we've been working on right now is the Community Benefits Program. And we've been working to try to develop this program with feedback and input and collaboration with the community. And the idea of the Community Benefits Program is to develop a defined set of commitments by the project proponents and created in coordination with the local community to create lasting, tangible, and potentially significant economic and social benefits to the residents, businesses, and organizations facing potential project impacts. And this is fairly typical for a lot of larger projects. And we think that given the types of effects that the Delta Conveyance Project may have, that this is an important component. So the idea of this is that it would be in addition to mitigation that is proposed to avoid or reduce impacts through the California Environmental Quality Act and the National Environmental Policy Act. And we've been having a series of meetings to get feedback and input from the community. We had 3 public meetings, the last of which was last night, and 1 meeting with tribes. And we are going to continue to reach out. We have several ways to comment and provide input on our website, and we'd love to hear ideas. And we are considering next steps, most likely having another set of interviews to try to collect some information. Also, I wanted to mention, I know that in the past people have provided a lot of feedback that you're interested in information about soil investigations in the Delta. So I wanted to let you know that there are a few soil investigations continuing through the end of June. We've been posting 2-week look-ahead maps on our website so that if you are interested in what's coming up next, it's rotated every week and you can see where we will be in the next 2 weeks. In addition, I brought information about TEP status, that's the temporary entry permit status. So just a summary, in 2020, we requested 54 temporary entry permits, and out of those, 20 responded yes, one is still in progress, 4 went on hold, and 29 moved towards the court-ordered entry process. This year, we have requested 47. Out of those, and some of those have been requested pretty recently, so they're still sort of in progress. So out of those, 8 have said yes, 10 have negotiations in process, 15 said no, and the rest are in different phases of still being in progress. So those are general updates. And so at this point, I'd like to hand it over to Genevieve Taylor. Genevieve Taylor is a consultant for the project. She works for Ag Innovations, an independent facilitation firm. And they helped us last year conduct a survey on environmental justice resources. And I think I've talked about it several times with this group, but Genevieve is going to give us more information about the survey and some of the results. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to Genevieve.
Great. Perfect. Thank you. Hi, everyone. So glad to have a little time with you. A little more background, Ag Innovations is a 501c3 nonprofit, and we have a 20-year history of working on complex challenges around agriculture and natural resources issues. So it was an honor to be invited to work on environmental justice outreach on behalf of DWR. So last fall, we put together the Your Delta, Your Voice Environmental Justice Community Survey, and did a lot of outreach around it and learned a lot. And so this presentation will share some of what we learned and how we approached outreach. Next slide, please. So the goal of the Your Delta, Your Voice survey was to gather direct input from disadvantaged communities in the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta region about how they work, live, recreate, and experience the Delta. We had a focus on communities that are historically burdened, underrepresented, people of color, and low-income communities of interest, including Indigenous and tribal members. Next slide, please. So who responded to this survey? We had 2,117 total participants. And, you know, this graphic shows how it broke down. So of that 22,000 or so participants, there were 540 Delta region disadvantaged community participants. And the way that we define DAC is non-white or household income is less than $60,000 per year, or by zip code and their household income is less than $75,000 per year. And that was because we needed to put a cap, although their zip code may have been considered disadvantaged. It also included 166 Delta region SDAC participants. And so SDAC is severely disadvantaged communities. And pardon me, I do end up using DAC and SDAC as a short term. So that's disadvantaged community and severely disadvantaged community. And SDAC is defined as household income is less than $45,000 per year, or they have a zip code and household income is less than $60,000 per year. We use Cal and BioScreen and a DWR screening tool for identifying zip codes and helping us identify people by the information that they shared. Now, some of the all survey participants were likely, in fact, it looked very likely that they were in the Delta and may have been disadvantaged, but they didn't share that information so that we could categorize them. So the way that we organized this is we shared information from all survey participants, from Delta region DAC participants, from Delta region SDAC participants. We also shared information based on ethnicity, and we had a focus on Native American comments as well that we included in our analysis. So And one thing else I would point out is that we had 311 respondents to a Chinese survey, which we developed. And, we actually translated the whole survey into Chinese, and then 12 respondents in Spanish, although we had, great representation from the Latino community as a whole. 12 were, only 12 took it in Spanish. Next slide, please. All right, have you ever participated before? That was one of the questions we asked. And this one, actually about over 60% of Delta DAC respondents, 66% of SDAC respondents, and 61% had not participated in a Delta tunnel proposal planning process. And that was exciting. It meant that we reached people who hadn't been involved through using this survey. Next slide, please. Another question we asked is, what's most important to you? And so this was a slide that, or a screen that had 12 different priorities and an opportunity to add your own priority through comments. And you can see, some of the priorities were clean air and drinking water, natural environment, well-maintained levees, preserving agriculture, parks and recreation, et cetera. So there's a number of different priorities. The top three were clean air and drinking water, natural environment, and well-maintained levees. And you can see here that clean air and drinking water and natural environment were the top for Delta DAC and SDAC. And they were also the top two for all participants. But when we had all participants, their top preference was actually natural environment. And we saw that quite a bit in the survey, where the three groups that we were analyzing would share the same top three priorities, but they would differ in order. And that did seem significant over time as we were looking at all of the responses. Next slide, please. Another question is, what do you like best about the Delta region? Again, the top 5 priorities are the same for DAC, SDAC, and all. So beautiful rural landscape, quality of the natural environment, slower lifestyle and small town feel, access to outdoor activities, history and culture of the area. Where they did differ actually was in some of the ways that the bottom 5 qualities. So DAC and SDAC Delta region participants tended to include a higher priority around diverse cultures, welcoming community, local jobs, and access to affordable and quality housing. Whereas all respondents, when you looked at that group, had less of an emphasis on those, and you can see that is in yellow. That would make sense because there were many people who participated from around the state as well in this, and so their experience would be different in the Delta. All right, next slide, please. What, if any, concerns do you currently have about living or working in the Delta? That was another question we asked, and the top concerns were drinking water quality, levee maintenance and flooding, and quality of the natural environment. So those were those top 3. And there was certainly there was high priorities below that, but there was quite a jump between these top 3 and the quality of roads, traffic, et cetera. You can see, though, in the Delta SDAC respondents over to the right, that traffic actually popped up a bit over for Delta SDAC respondents. You can also see that drinking water quality and levee maintenance and flooding were, more of a significant choice for SDAC respondents. And then if you look at all respondents, again, the top 3 were the same, but all respondents chose levee maintenance and flooding and quality of the natural environment over drinking water quality. So certainly those, the core things that we need to survive were front and center for Delta and SDAC Delta region respondents. Let's see, and down here to the left, sorry, that was protecting the natural environment of the Delta. Its healthiness affects the entire region. So I include quotes in here and you can see them throughout the slides. All right, next slide. Another question we asked was, do you spend much time visiting the Delta waterways and natural areas? And some significant responses here is, first of all, yes, at least once per month. And that actually was a question is, you know, if we're talking to historically burdened communities, how much are they actually enjoying the Delta's natural areas and waterways? And so we, you know, had strong confirmation that they were regularly in the Delta, in the natural areas and waterways. You can also see SDAC respondents, 63%. For Delta region, it was 70, excuse me, for DAC, it was 70%. And likewise for all respondents, those who answered this question, you know, responded that 65% of them were in the Delta regularly. So the people who were involved were, you know, had a relationship with the Delta's waterways and natural areas. You can also see here, as it's broken down by ethnicity, that you know, over 50% of people who identified their ethnicity and answered this question also said that they were in the Delta at least once per month. So, you know, I think we can take that as a, you know, as they're speaking to these questions, we can know that they are, you know, they're people who are regularly in the Delta. All right, next slide. What activities do you do most frequently in the Delta? And hiking, walking, or running was the top choice by both DAC, Delta Region, DAC, and SDAC. In the bottom right-hand corner in smaller slide, you can see actually water activities was the top choice, although again, the top two of hiking, walking, or running and water activities were the same for all respondents and for the Delta Region DAC respondents. This changes a bit, although not significantly, for SDAC. So the thing to note about SDAC is how frequently they chose that option of hiking, walking, or running. It definitely was their top choice for severely disadvantaged community members. And just hanging out was their second choice, although it was almost tied with water activities. All right, next slide. Another type of question we asked was having people identify map markers and about special places to them. And so we asked about outdoor activities, fishing spots, historic and cultural sites, gathering places, businesses and services, and other special places. And the top identified map kind of markers were in outdoor activities. You know, that certainly was, you know, the map, you can see in the left-hand corner, map marker types by survey participant category. Outdoor activities was the most identified by people who participate, with fishing as the next. So next slide, please. Some highlights from the special places mapping question was, first of all, in that left, starting kind of on the left at about 9 o'clock on this circle, the most frequently selected outdoor activity were water activities. Combined marinas and restaurants are popular. So very much people described how they were recreating and living on the water. Another interesting highlight was that 96% of Delta DAC respondents identified historic and cultural sites as needing improvement. And lock was identified in 41% of those map markers. So it was definitely the most identified site as a cultural or historic site. So that was an interesting takeaway from the map markers exercise. And then finally, down on the bottom, we discovered that of those who answered that question that about fishing activities, 90% eat fish 4 or more times per week of those who responded. So that was a really interesting learning, is that there were so many people who are eating the fish on the Delta. And you can see these are some of the quotes you know, that we drew from the special places mapping exercise. Next slide, please. Another question we asked was, are there services that are needed in your community? And social services are definitely needed in the community. 67% of Delta Region DAC comments said yes, they are needed. Top services identified included homeless services, food banks and food security, and other issues were affordable and quality housing, children's and teens programs, health and medical services. And you can see there's a wide array of things that that folks actually put in this word cloud. You can see some of the themes from that. These aren't their quotes, but these are themes that we identified. There was also a group that said no services were needed. So 19% of the Delta region DAC comments said no services are needed in the Delta. And mostly they were referring to self-sufficiency and feeling like they hadn't had what they needed, and that services were provided that were needed. The significant issue seemed to be around homelessness. And you can see that this quote speaks to limited opportunities for education, high poverty, chronic unemployment, and soaring housing costs, along with mental health and substance abuse issues, all contribute to this growing challenge. Next slide, please. What potential benefits of the proposal could you see for your community? That was another question we asked, and more than 2/3 of the Delta region DAC respondents commented that there are no benefits that they could see that would come from the project. Other responses that did say that there are benefits that they could see included jobs and training and improving the natural environment. I think it's important to note that the community benefits program was not in existence at the time of the survey, and especially for folks that haven't had experience in working with large infrastructure projects, they wouldn't have known that that was even a possibility. So that's definitely, there's a chapter 1 in this story and then a chapter 2. Next slide, please. Some learnings that we had, Delta DAC participants have strong interest in the natural environment and preserving the Delta and its community, agriculture, and heritage. For many, their quality of life is interwoven with life on the water. People described, boating to dinner, going out with friends, just being on the water and the enjoyment that they got from that. They also talked about access, and for some of them, it seemed that transportation on the water was important. Outdoor activities are important to Delta DAC participants, including hiking, walking, and running, and water activities. So both of those were important, but I think it is notable, the hiking, walking, and running answer. Finally, services are needed with a strong emphasis on homelessness. So there's much more that I could say, but these were some of the highlights that we had from the survey, and be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. Very, very informative. I know you highlighted in one of, and it's true that you were able to reach people that had not been previously reached. I also look at it as people that should have been reached, and that's not a criticism, but they should have been reached to have that input a lot much sooner. And that has nothing to do with your project. It just highlights what we who've been working here know. Any comments or questions for Genevieve or Carrie? Campbell, I know that our packets are posted on the website, and so if somebody knew about this, they'd know where to go look. But I'm wondering if you feel it's appropriate to post this as a separate item on our website so that people can look at this excellent work, and we can point people to it for this work. Jessica?
There is a link to this on our website in the board packet.
No, I know that, but if you don't know that it's a presentation or whatever, I'd like it as its own separate, I'll call it thumbnail or button that, here's a study that was done about
yes.
That, I don't.
Yeah, I think we can absolutely do that. Yeah, that would be great. We'll just one of our opening segments on the website, we'll have that, it'll describe it and then have the link.
And I think that's, I'm looking ahead, but Dylan was working on Jedi. This is a perfect tie-in to that about what we need to be doing externally. Sandy had talked about that in her comments on that agenda item. So yes, I'd like it to be as separate.
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to just quickly say how much we appreciate Genevieve and Carrie and the results from this, because as you said, Karen, it's very relevant to a lot of what we do. There are SDAC requirements within our Proposition 68 program You all might remember that we touted our mercury exposure reduction program a long time ago that put up all the wonderful signs around that helped people understand what fish are safe to eat. And when you see a survey like this that says that people are eating fish 4 times a week, you see the significance and the importance of those signs to help people understand what the risks are. So this is data that just sort of supports and should be relevant to everything that we do. So it's really great to know it's out there.
Yeah, thank you. I was very impressed with it. Sandy's there. I see shaking heads. You all see shaking heads. All righty. And so Carrie, now that that work is done, the Conveyance Authority will take that. What will they do with it?
So we're planning to use these results in a number of different ways. One of them is that we are using this information to provide input to the environmental justice chapter of the environmental impact report. This provides a lot of useful information about how disadvantaged communities use resources in the Delta. And so that helps us understand how affecting different resources could also affect disadvantaged communities. Additionally, it's providing some input for community benefits. So the idea that these are the resources that are relied on helps us understand what types of projects may also help disadvantaged communities.
Okay. I have one tab for the agenda and one for the packet. So I go up and down, but I close the packet. So are these, this PowerPoint presentation was part of the packet is what you're saying, Jessica?
We provide the link to the PowerPoint.
That's great, because I want to share it with my county staff, and I'm sure many of my colleagues here want to share this information because, as you said, Campbell, a lot of that information is useful when we're doing other work. So I just want to be able to do that. All righty. Okay, well then, I'm going to open it up again for public comment on any item not on the agenda. Since we've had such a robust participation by the public, I'm sure there's many people waiting there to offer their comments to us. Correctly, Lisa, or am I wrong?
There is no public comment.
Okay, thank you. I didn't mean for you to have to say I was wrong. I don't want to put you on the spot like that. But with that, thank you everyone for your attention. Thank you staff for all of the excellent work and the reports. And we wish you a good day. Happy Memorial Day. And look forward to seeing you all in person in the very not too distant future, I guess is what I'll say. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Hi, everybody. Nice to see you.
Thank you.